Hey everybody, welcome to the Snow West Show. We are back with another show here for you on the 2026 Skidoo Summit lineup. Well, we're going to jump into the entire lineup here. We've got a full list of guests here. This is probably one of the biggest shows we've done ever, if I remember. I think I've got 7, 8 guests on the line here. We're joined with a couple of the engineers. If you saw the live broadcast that we did, oh man, 2, 3 weeks ago in West Yellowstone, Montana, we have online here with us Fred Desjardins. He's the Skidoo project manager. So Fred, being the Skidoo project manager, you're kind of over the lineup as a whole, correct?
Yeah, correct. We cover the entire lineup. Until a few months ago, I was fully in charge of the mountain. Mathieu Hamel took over the mountain segment. But I support the team on other product too, so other project.
I love that aspect of it because I know that where you've gone from being the mountain director, now you're over the whole product line. I know the mountains are going to the mountain sleds are going to get taken care of. We're going to still be kind of top of the tier there, right?
Yeah, correct. Honestly, the entire lineup is important, but mountain is, I would say, a big portion of our pie, and we give everything we can on that segment.
Also here joining us from Skidoo Factory, we've got Vincent Duchesne. Vincent, if I've got this right, you are Skidoo product manager, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the difference between project manager and product manager?
It's more about product strategy. So I have a let's say 7-year lineup strategy, and we're making sure to deploy the right product at the right time, looking into opportunities where customers are demanding new stuff. So we're making sure to bring the right thing at the right moment on the market, at the right price as well. So I'm kind of the voice of the customer in the product development.
So if your camera was zoomed out quite a bit more, would we be able to see some of that 7-year strategy on the background?
This is a whiteboard, so we can work on it.
All right, and then we've got a lineup of Skidoo ambassadors here. I think everybody's going to be familiar with this crew. This is a pretty rowdy bunch. We've got Steve Martin joining us from Evanston, Wyoming. How you doing, Steve?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Were you up at the hill climb last weekend, King of Kelly's?
No, I wasn't, but I'll be at Jackson this weekend.
Okay, there were a couple drivers there that had you and your dad on there as sponsors and support team.
Oh, maybe it was Adam Renheim. The sled was at my shop and I swapped the track for him. So.
Oh, did you hear that story?
Funny.
Sorry, this is going to go off the rails real quick, but Adam Renheim shows up. Whoever was in charge of the running orders at Rimshot put Lima, Texas on the running order. So for the first little bit during qualifying, I was in there with Flow Racing doing the live announcing, and we were introducing Adam Renheim from Lima, Texas, first Texan ever to come up here and race snowmobiles in Rimshot. And he finishes up one of his qualifiers. Somebody texted him from home. He bangs on the door and comes in. We put him on the broadcast, and he's like, "No, it's Lima, Sweden. I'm Swedish. Listen to me." So that was awesome.
That's awesome.
We had a lot of fun with him. That was a fun event. Jeremy Mercier also joining us. You calling in from Grand Lake, Colorado. How you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing great. Been riding sleds a lot. Had a great winter so far. Tomorrow will be day 90, so it's a pretty good season to say the least. Average snowfall year. Can't complain. It's been really fun.
And then we've got Dave Nerona. Man, we haven't had you on for a little while. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. I actually just got off the mountain. We are also in BC getting absolutely pounded with fresh snow. And sun. Today was like, it's one of those days that poured overnight. You get all excited. You wake up in the morning as you walk to your truck in the dark and you see stars and you kind of go, oh boy, going to be a good one. So
yeah, we need to get this calendar reset, move back and have winter start again in December rather than start in March. But yeah, we're off and rolling, right?
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see. And when the season ends off with a bang, everybody, we're, as sledders, we all forget, right? And we forget some of the early season things that weren't as good. And now it's awesome, and we're out having fun and burning gas and getting stuck and upside down in creeks. It's perfect.
Yep, and speaking upside down in creeks, we got the legend Carl Kuster on the line here. Carl Kuster, how are you doing?
One time. Good, how are you?
One time. You weren't even upside down in that one, sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Carl,
that was a riot, though.
You were just down here a couple weeks ago. We did the Fox Factory intro and rode with you and Tony Jenkins, also another Skidoo ambassador. Yeah, man, that was a lot of fun. That was some of the best snow we had all year.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome.
All right, we're going to jump in here and talk about 2026 stuff. Skidoo probably has the biggest lineup change going into 2026, the new model year. You've completely revamped the Summit X. Took 14 pounds, up to 14 pounds off of that on the NA version, 13 pounds off it on the turbo version. Some big feature changes there. Everybody's talking about that lightweight coilover rear suspension. I'm pretty stoked about that. I love the responsive feel for it. The new tunnel, the shorter length tunnel, the lighter tunnel material, a little bit shorter cooler, less coolant capacity, just reducing overall weight there. New forged upper A-arm on the front end there, and a new S module. And Fred, this is kind of a work of art here.
Yeah, we told you that we will reduce the weight each year, and this year was a big one, especially on the X, okay, with that minus 14 pound. We are proud of it, but you name all the feature we had to modify to go through this. So as you can figure, minus 14 pound is not a easy task. So that's why that involve many components, but we definitely feel it when we jump on the sled and ride it.
Absolutely. Another thing I didn't mention on there on the 2026 Summit X is the new lightweight track. That's got a little bit thinner belt, and you've changed the width on the outer lugs a little bit just to take a couple pounds off of the track, more rotating mass. And it's impressive how much different that machine handles than even a model year 2025 with the weight savings there. And then jumping over to the 2026 Skidoo Summit X with Expert package. This is an interesting year because going into this podcast, we put out a few posts on our social media asking for followers to submit questions that they want to ask the engineering team of Fred and Vincent, and questions that they want to ask the ambassadors, Steve, Jeremy, Dave, and Carl. And a lot of it just came down to, and it was open up to the whole lineup, but a lot of it came down to the Summit X and the Expert. And the majority of the questions are really centered around the Summit Expert. The Summit Expert for 2026 has an all-new front end, the S32 front end with new steering system, twin-link steering system, and of course a 32-inch ski stance with new control arms, upper and lower control arms, new shocks, new piggyback KYB shocks. You've got that narrower ski stance going for you. It also gets the lightweight tunnel, the changes made to the tunnel, shorter length, shortened the cooler, thinner tunnel material, thinner materials on the cross members there, and lighten up the vehicle and just change the way this thing rides. So let's jump into the meat and potatoes here of what we're talking about. Fred, will you give us just a quick overview on why you continue to separate the Summit X and the Summit X with Expert package?
Just to sum up all what you just said, okay, the Expire is 8 pounds lighter this year than last year. Yeah, we keep the Expire and the X gap because the difference between both is quite, big for some customer. Like if you want to have some precision going sidehilling or in gnarly stuff, when the snow is not good, you want to be on an Expert, steep hill, old ruts. So this is the vehicle you want because of the precision. But I will not say a drawback, but you have to work it out a bit harder than on the X. And some people just don't want to go that steep hill, crossing old ruts, and they prefer the effortless and the easy driving of the and the light feeling of the X package. And we think that these two units are very important for our customer, let's say, customer fleet. And we say it by the sale too. Okay, so they are both very popular, and we think we should keep them.
I agree with that, and that'll lead us into our first question here, going off of our list from Instagram. Basher_67, his question to lead us off here is, why can't we get one sled with all the goodies? And you just touched on that, why the X and the Expert are different. But to sum that up, why don't you just do one mountain sled?
Again, the difference in behavior is quite, you can, Cal will take a X, okay, and outpace me anytime, even if I'm on Expert. So that's not only the thing, but the behavior is quite different than to try to mimic an expert with some of the X and the X with some of the expert. I think then we're going to miss both target and have two people that will have a happy medium sled. So we prefer to be full bold on each segment and get the best. And it's we don't see this as goodies. We see this as a differentiation between two behavior. They are both premium unit, but different ride characteristic.
Let's jump over to you, Jeremy. Jeremy, what is your response to that? Why, when somebody just says, "Why doesn't Skidoo just build one mountain sled?" What do you say to that customer?
It really depends on the person's riding and what they ride every day. I personally feel like the Summit X is easier to ride in everyday terrain, and the Expert's a lot easier to ride in really technical, challenging terrain. And you got to ask yourself, if you're buying a sled, like, be honest to yourself. What do I ride every day? Am I going out? And it's not that both sleds can't do what each other does, but you have to ask yourself, like, do you want a sled that, are you the guy that's going to be in the steep, thick trees all day? Or are you the guy that's more mellow, playful, having fun?
Carl, what do you think?
Well, I kind of think of, like the motorcycle world, and it's, free rides like supercross bike or motocross bike, and XC is like, the Expert, and then the W or whatever, like if it's a hard enduro bike, that's more like the Summit X or Summit, just the X. And like if you're going to run and gun and be fast, that's where the Expert works awesome, and you can still ride the X like that as well. But the X at the end of the day, for me, the lightweight, and all the customers we have at CKMP, I just see lightweight, man. It is makes the biggest difference at the end of the day, for the broadest spectrum of people. But if you're young and you got tons of energy, man, the X is a weapon. Like it's the hardest year I've ever since we've had the Expert. This has been by far the toughest year to decide which one to get.
So with that, which one are you leaning towards for next year?
Well, I think we'll probably get the X. There'll probably be maybe an Expert or two floating around for sure. We get some customers that like that kind of stuff. But, for our customers, I really think the X, is a fun sled. But if it was let's say subpar snow conditions and you knew that going into the year, man, I would take the Expert.
Steve,
I don't know if that helps you or not.
Well, it helps a little, I guess. Steve, you tend to lean more toward an Expert and a free ride, right, in your lineup?
Yeah, that's correct. I really like the precision of the Expert, like the DS4 ski, little stiffer valving, the T-Motion XT rear arm, because I'm carrying a lot of speed in the trees. And it's really rewarding when you have that precision. So if I'm making a maneuver at high speed around a tree, it's going exactly where I planned it.
And what do you feel jumping back and forth from an X, getting off your Expert and jumping on an X? What do you feel different?
To me, when I get on a Summit X, it's like relaxing. It feels like I have power steering all of a sudden, like super effortless to ride. It is really nice, but I'm like, Jay Menneberry said to me the other day, he's like, you like that, the DS4 and the stiff suspension because you grew up on a snowcross sled with CNA pros. I'm like, that's probably true. It's like ingrained in my DNA now.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Probably.
Hey, Narona, hop in here. You've been on both of these sleds. What's your take on this?
Well, I 100% agree with Jeremy and also with Carl in the sense that if Jeremy has ridden 90 days. So if you're riding 90 days on snow, it's the wizard, not the wand. You adapt to any machine, and you're going to find the one that you like the best. And, what's really important is, I think sometimes when people talk to us, they're like, oh, what does Skidoo tell you to ride? And they've never told us what to ride. We get it as a choice. And this year I agree with Carl, it is the hardest I've always been an X guy. I love I kind of come from skiing, and a lot of sports that I have, like mountain biking and stuff, things are very, like, I don't want to say loose, but they're very agile under you because you can maneuver them very easy. And that's exactly what I feel when I ride an X. And when I get on the Expert, like I was like everybody else, I thought, oh, this is going to be, is it going to, you know, everybody had the question, is it going to be too tippy on the trail? It's better on the trail. That thing is like, it is a knife on the, like, it does not feel tippy. But for me, at the end of the day, the sled I gravitate and like is the Summit X, and those are my choices. And I also didn't want to have two sleds that were different, like have an Expert at 32 and then have a Summit X at 34, because if anybody's even gone from, you know, a 36 front end to a 34 and then back, like you visit your friend and you get on a 36, you're like, I hate this. And then all of a sudden, a day later, you're used to it. So it's adaptability also, right? But when our Summit X, when mine came to me, it was set up at centered. And I was like, I don't even like this sled. And I'm like, this sled needs to be in the narrow position because I ride in the narrow position. I'm a small, light guy. And it's nothing against the Expert. I love that sled, you know, if you have a garage full of sleds. But I think at the end of the day, the honest answer to the consumer is, and Jeremy said it, it's like, you got to be honest. How many days do you get to ride? You know, the average consumer, they get to ride once on the weekend, 4 times a month. And they usually miss one due to a wedding or a kid's choir practice or whatever it is. And so at 3 times a month, that consumer, you want them to go out on those 3 days and have the best 3 days, right? If Jeremy doesn't have a good day, he's out tomorrow. Same with me. But all of us. But so I think that's where it really changes, and people have to be really honest with themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on something there, the handling on the trail. This is one of the questions we had on that, and I'm trying to find that real quick. Does the Expert with the S32, does that just become too hard to ride on a trail because it's so narrow? And you touched on that. It's actually better. And I would agree with that just from a test rider standpoint, third party point of view. The S32 handles better going down a trail, which was a big shock for me and, you know, Brock Jenner, Bruce Curbs, Justin Stevens, Rhett Clark, my test ride staff at Snow West. Everybody got a chance to take the Expert and go up the trail heading towards the mountains. And every one of them got off and said the same thing, like, that thing handles better than last year's Expert.
Yeah, totally. And it's you know, it is, you have to be careful, right? Because when everybody we've been around demos, when they try that 32 front end and they go up the trail and they get up, they're like, this is what I want. And then they try it and they side hill and they're like, oh, I want this for sure. And then if they ride it a little bit longer, some of them gravitate to the Summit X. They like, actually, I do see the difference there. So again, you know, the hardest thing of this is we call one the Expert and we call one the Summit X, right? And we're sledders, we have egos. Nobody wants to ride what might seem as the detuned Summit Expert. And we don't promote it that way. I don't look at it that way. I get to ride all these sleds as we all do, and I choose the one that suits me, and Jeremy does the same, and no one tells us. We get our own choice. And I think because we're honest of how much we ride, what we want to ride, you know, I do a lot more sled skiing, paddle surfing off machines, all that stuff adds into, you know, the time you're spending on a machine doing certain things.
Yeah, and I'll jump over to you, Carl, now for a second. Let's talk about the Expert in particular with that S32 front end being 2 inches narrower than the Summit X with the 34-inch front end. I've got a couple questions here. First one from Andrew Call 208. Does the Expert panel out with the ski stance being more narrow? And then Privileged Pioneer, he asks the same thing. How are they combating paddling out now that the ski stance is narrower on that? Talk to that aspect a little bit with the narrower front end.
Yeah, you know, that was something that we've heard in the past or in the last little bit as well. But, you know, the difference between like the paneling out situation is that we had experienced in maybe 2022 specifically with the Gen 4 was, you know, when the skis get tucked in the belly pan or like inside the ball line of the belly pan per se. And the Gen 5 isn't quite it's definitely the ski sticks out past, but the real difference is the 32 turns an extra 15 degrees. Am I right, Fred? 15 degrees sharper in each direction. 30.
Yeah,
so 30 total.
Yeah,
30%.
Yeah.
So what happens is then the heel of the ski, or tail, if you will, it sticks out, you know, a lot more. So you can actually combat that. Or if you turn the other way, it can be the tip of the ski, like if you want to go back up. So really, you can have control over that. That's a nice thing.
Jeremy,
it's a nice option. Like the whole geometry of the 32, it it's not really a snowcross sled, but man, it is pretty good on the trail for a 32. It's astounding, really.
It tracks
And
pretty
one
straight.
other thing that I would say, if you had to take a, pick a sled, think about your trail ride in. In Canada, like we start a lot earlier, or not a lot earlier, but a lot lower elevation. So typically our riding area is a lot further in. And if it doesn't get groomed as much, man, the Expert's a pretty nice choice because it's got some pretty capable suspension. The Expert is pretty capable suspension, with the remote reservoirs. But the X is definitely a little stiffer now as well. Like, you know, if you're going to pound it though for 30 kilometers and you have a jerry can on the back, like, maybe an X is more the thing. But if you only got 5 miles of trail or 3 miles of trail because you unload at high elevations, then you can get away with an X too.
Yeah, and
So
when we get this question when we're out and about and just riding and talking to people, the thing I like to tell people is just, look, you got to break this down completely individually. This isn't just one snowmobile for the Western market anymore. You've got to look at
yeah,
how you ride, the terrain that you ride. If you live kind of down here by us in southeastern Idaho, you got to take the snowpack into consideration. What is the majority of your riding like? Every time you go out and ride, are you 4 or 5 miles of bumpy single track in, or are you jumping right into the loose snow? You got to factor all that in and decide, okay, the X does this, the Expert does that. They're similar, yes, but they're different enough that I've got to pick the one that fits my particular riding style quite a bit better. Jeremy, what do you feel specifically the difference between the Expert and the X, talking the 2026, in a firm snow setting and in a really deep snow, like powder setting?
When we first tested this out last year, I immediately was like, man, these are two completely different snowmobiles, in my opinion. They really rode differently. The Expert took me a little bit to get used to. It's definitely like you're riding more neutral, you're riding less wrong foot forward, which in my opinion is better because you're conserving more energy in technical terrain. I honestly, I couldn't go back to a 34 is my opinion. Once you do get used to it, it's quite the nimble machine. And what I really noticed is when we were riding this up in Canada last year, we had really bad snow conditions. Like it was firm. Like I probably could have rode my skateboard down some of the mountains. Like it was tough. And we were jumping back and forth from the Summit X to the Expert. And the group I was with that day, like it was unanimous. We're like, oh my gosh, the 32 and firmer snow hitting old ruts, old bumps. It just shined. Like it was a no-brainer to me.
Steve, I'll hop over to you for a second. I'll just read this question off real quick from 309 Photo. How does the Expert compare to the X across different snow conditions, wet, low, deep, soft, kind of what Jeremy was talking about? Is there a learning curve to the 2026 Expert?
Yeah, for sure there is. If like initially you're going to think it's really easy to override initially. So, but like Jeremy said, if you just ride it neutral and give a little less input than you would on like your 25, then it's unbelievable how it's so much easier for me. I'm a shorter guy. I was actually following you, Ryan, and we were in steep terrain in Island Park, and the snow went from really soft to like the spring, like it had been running off the trees around the tree wells, to really hard. And the Summit Expert was so much easier for me. And I think a lot of that is due that they didn't just put short little A-arms on it and call it a new front end. Everything between the riser and the ski is all new. So that twin link front end for me, that, like Carl said, it's not a snowcross sled, but man, it's really good. There's less feedback in the handlebars, almost zero when you're at like full lock. And that's everything for me is like I said before, that predictable feel across a really nasty side hill with varying conditions.
So staying on track there with what you're talking about, Steve, real quick. I got a question here from Jersey 29 off of YouTube, off of Snow West Magazine YouTube channel. And they ask, would the 32 be ideal for shorter, lighter riders? Shorter riders having general less leverage than 6'3" guys. I can tell you what I think being a 6'4" rider, but what do you think?
I think that it still comes down to what you're riding mostly. The Summit X is so easy to ride in. It's like that core Ski-Doo DNA where the sled feels like it's easy to wheelie. But the Expert, for me, I'm shorter, but I'm like, I look on Google Earth for nasty drainages, high consequence terrain. So that's why I like gravitate to an expert with the skinny front end.
I'll give you
Doesn't
my
always
take
work
on it real
out.
quick. And just being a taller guy, a lot of people say, "Well, you're cheating. You know, you've got all that leverage. It's cheating." I feel like the 2026 expert gives everybody else that advantage because, man, I get on a 2026 expert with that S32 front end, and you don't jump around on it. You don't swing a leg clear out and do a lot of wrong foot forward stuff, and you don't throw a lot of body weight around. So to me, it seems like, if you're talking about a little bit shorter rider, a little bit smaller build, they are going to have kind of that same advantage that I've had for the last 5 or 6 years of just being able to make the sled do things just by tipping the head or throwing the shoulders a little bit rather than having to really jump all over the snowmobile.
Yeah, exactly. And um, I don't have to hang off the side like you said, and I'm able to on a really steep side hill. I don't have to be so leaned into the hill with the snowmobile. I can leave the sled is at a flatter angle and it's kind of balancing itself, so I have more track in the snow. That's where it really helps.
So on that, and Fred, I'm going to have you respond to this one real quick because we've talked about this before. We talked about this in our last podcast. When the question comes up about is the narrower front end too narrow? Is it going to make the sled panel out? Your response earlier was no because you're not leaning into the hill as much.
Correct. So you need to lean less. Okay, you drive this vehicle more neutral. So eventually, I will not say it's like a snow bike, but it's getting close. Okay, so you don't have to lean that much with the 32. So you are the panel is still pretty far from the snow. In fact, we did not experience it yet. And as Carl mentioned, when we jumped from the Gen 4 to the Gen 5, we went much narrower at the footboard and also the panel. And going 34 and now 32 allow us to side hill with less of an angle, having this gap. But I just like to come back a bit on what Jeremy was saying when he tried the one of the proto more than a year ago in BC. We were having Jeremy, Steve, Carl, Rob Alford, and Mason Rutledge, all these guys that, they can ride pretty fast in pretty bad condition. And it was a good thing that the condition was so bad. And they were able to see the difference with the expert Sidehilling in this hard snow with old trace everywhere. And this is because of the, I think it's Steve that mentioned it. We did not just went -2 inch on the width. Okay, we have a new front suspension, totally redesigned, new ski leg, and this twin link system that keep the ski straight and give less input to the arm when you cross these trails. So it's a combination of several things that make it more predictable and easier to drive to these terrain. Yeah.
Carl, maybe I'll let you explain this a little bit here. You're good at kind of explaining this stuff with your race background. If you go to the Snow West Magazine Instagram, we posted a clip of Skidoo had this model of the S32 front end. So it's got the whole steering system, the S module, the A-arms, the shocks, and the skis. And you can see how sharp the steering turned on the old system, and you can see how much sharper, 30% sharper, 30% more steering angle with the S32. Why does being able to turn sharper improve the side healing?
Well, what happens is then the tail end of the ski sticks out further from the sled or the tip of the ski. So if you're on the edge and you need to go up, very aggressively, you can, when you counter steer, the tip sticks into the hill. Like, I don't know, it's just math in my head, so it's not exact. But, let's say on a X, it's this far, the ski tip sticks out past the panel when the ski's turned, whereas an expert, it's like considerably more. So it grabs the snow and then it'll turn the sled uphill. Like, so you can feel the snow and you can control that, right? So, and if you're on two skis, let's say it's subpar snow conditions, and you want to turn really sharp, or you're dropping down into a creek or something, but you want to side hill down into the creek, not get stuck in the bottom. You can turn a lot sharper, so you can like it's crazy the turning radius of the sled. And maybe Fred, you know the numbers on that, but it's noticeably tighter. You know, it just makes it. It's like being able on a dirt bike turning the handlebars quite sharp. You know, because a snowmobile you can't just pick the front end up and move it over like you can a dirt bike. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you really
Well,
need
yeah.
tight steering is nice.
And one thing I'd like to add on this, what Carl said, is that, previously when we were sidehilling, let's say with the X or the last year X-Pire, sometimes you sidehill and the nose of the vehicle want to climb, okay? And the people thought that we were washing out, but it was not a real washout, it was the nose that want to go higher. And now with this extra angle, you can just countersteer more and the nose will go down again. So that helped a lot the stability going side hill. So this is a behavior that is easy to observe. Sometimes the nose wants to go high, and then you turn it a bit up, it goes down again. So that extra radius help for that.
Yeah, because the more you can countersteer, if you're already cut in a side hill and you're already on your edge and you're on a pretty steep side hill cutting across the snow, the more you can countersteer away from the mountain, you can get the front end to drop back down because you're driving the spindle into the snow and the tip of the ski isn't really making contact, and so it's not wanting to lift the sled. And so this is one of those aspects of technical terrain riding that gives the expert a different, distinct feel than the X, because the expert has this S32 front end and this improved, 30% more steering angle. You can turn sharper. It's narrower, so it's easy to initiate that roll even more than it already was. And that's quite a bit different behavior than the Summit X has with the 34-inch front end.
Yeah, and also we did not mention it, but with the Twinling, okay, we have also much less bump steer. The performance is close to a rack steering without the extra weight. So that gives also, that is one of the reasons why it goes so well in the trail.
Well, but in the trail,
almost snowcross.
Yeah, snowcross style. On the trail, it's better, but it's also better side heeling if you come across old tracks, right? Because if you compress that uphill suspension, that the control arms and the front shock that are on the uphill side, if you cut across old tracks and you compress that suspension with bump steer, it's actually going to push the nose of the sled away from the mountain a little bit every time it compresses. But you reduce that with the S32 and the Twin Link, and it's no longer doing that. It's keeping the nose pretty straight, right?
Correct.
All right, let's jump on here to another one. Real quick here, Captain Darty off of YouTube, he asks, is the S32 front end retrofittable to earlier Gen 5 Summits?
Technically, yes, okay, but it will be quite of a job to have a Twin Link system installed in a vehicle. The A-arm stuff and ski leg will be easy, but the Twin Link will be the challenge, and I will not recommend to go 32 without the Twin Link. So, but technically, yes, you can retrofit it, but the magnitude of the job can be quite big. But I know some our customers are quite good technicians, so they can take it apart and make it. So yes, you can, but I recommend that you just trade your sled for a new 26. So, yeah.
Okay,
maybe if I may add on this, if the guy is coming from an expert, he would need to swap his front shock as well, because we have new front piggyback shocks on the expert with the reservoir being put a bit higher, so they clear out the A-arms. So old piggybacks wouldn't fit in the 32-inch stance.
Vincent, from your side of things, what are you hearing consumer feedback-wise on the S32 front end on the expert?
So far, very good. We had the chance to have a couple demo sleds running around Western US and Western Canada. So far, everything is pretty good. People are, there's two big topics. This year there's a coilover on the X, and there's the 32 on the expert. I mean, so far everybody that tried both are quite impressed. So, I mean, expert has always been, since its introduction, the most popular sled in our lineup. I think the name drags a lot of people to it, but now people are a bit more considering the X. We're seeing let's say the mix of sales that we're seeing so far in the spring is still towards the expert, but a bit more on the X than previously. So I think people are starting to learn about the X. I think, and that's a good thing. I mean, that's why we're making both sleds. There's one for each type of riders, and as Dave said earlier, people need to be honest on which one they really which suits them the best. So.
And that's an interesting point to mention too, because what you just said there is mainly the reason why you've kind of homologated the colors across the X and the Expert. You can get both of those models in the same colors.
Exact. So a couple of years ago, we had the different colors on the Expert and the X, and some people were choosing the sled because they preferred the color on the Expert or the X. So one strategy that we had was to use the same colors on both models, so people then would be able to choose whatever color they want, and then select the sled of choice, the package they really need.
Nerona, I want to go down to you with this one. Talking about the X now, transitioning from the Expert to the X. What do you feel with a 14-pound weight reduction?
Yeah, a big difference. I'm a small guy too. I'm 5'6", 145 pounds, and so anything out of the machine lightweight really makes a difference. And yeah, I think the way that sled reacts in the backcountry and on the trail is something that I just love. I love the feel of it, and I love how I can just place it where I want it with ease. And like I said, I keep the stock can, but if someone were to take a lightweight can, they're almost getting rid of their turbo weight out of the machine.
Steve, up to you with that same question. What do you feel with the weight reductions? How does this impact your ride, your day, your energy at the end of the day? What do you get out of a lightweight build like this?
The first that Summit X, when the first day we rode it, it really stole the show. I'm not very good at bow ties. Dave and I have talked about this a lot. But on that Summit X, I can get that snowmobile to come right out of the snow. Like I did one, everyone was standing at the top of this creek bottom, and they were just going to watch me rip through it really fast. But they were standing there, so I just knifed up and did a bow tie, and like the track was like in their face. And it was so cool because before we had this Summit X, and that was 14 pounds lighter. I'm not very good at them. So, and to be able to get the sled to rip right out of the snow like that was incredible. And another thing that it really reminds me of is when like Carl and I were racing snowcross, we'd race 440s the first day and then 800 mods the second day. And the 800 mods were like lightweight tanks, everything stripped off them, no headlight. And they felt so light. And that's what that Summit X feels like. That's the first thing I noticed, that it was 14 pounds lighter. And that's really cool. That's what made the decision, what to ride next year so difficult. Like that lightweight feeling, I was having so much fun on the NA because it felt so light, felt like a toy.
I'm right there with you because I would normally lead towards the Expert just because of the kind of stuff we like to do up here is a little more of the technical side of things, but I had so much fun on that Summit XNA at the intro. It just felt so much lighter. And Carl, I'm going to come to you in just a second, so get ready for that. But when I jumped on the Summit XNA, we went through kind of the single track moguls. Steve, you've been there with me a couple years ago. Just that first section off the trail into the mountains, just rough as all get out. I rode a 2025 Summit X with torsion springs through that section to kind of get my baseline. I start my testing like that all the time. And then I jumped over to the 2026 with the coilover, and instantly that sled felt more responsive, more lively, like it popped out of the moguls a lot quicker. Carl, is there anything to the coilover that just makes a sled more lively like that?
Yeah, no, if you're thinking kind of like rebound, it definitely, I think, helps pop a little bit. But really, it's mostly the weight thing, I think, and the calibration on either one of those model year 26 sleds is really a big step in the right direction, I think. And even for me, I think, man, for somebody that's lighter, like maybe 140 pounds, I don't know, and Steve or Dave or Jeremy, you guys could maybe attest to this too. I think it might be, on the cusp of being a little stiff if the bumps are, medium sized. But I think once you put a jerry can and a bag on there, which I didn't get a chance to do, I assume it would like settle it out and it'll be, really well calibrated.
Jeremy, you spent a lot of time on the Summit X. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, just like what he was saying, we were really surprised on the Summit X on like that exact spot you're talking about, Ryan. Tony took us into that spot, and we were coming out way too fast. But we were really impressed with how well the coilover and the whole setup worked in those big bumps.
You were racing in the tight trees, is what was going on.
Allegedly.
Jeremy, up to you real quick. Just kind of the same thing. You spent a lot of time on the Summit X. What does a lighter Summit X mean to you?
Anything lightweight is always a plus. We're talking about a 6-pound difference between the Expert and the Summit X. And not to go back to the Expert, but like with that narrow front end, the Expert rode just as light, if not lighter to me, just because it was less effort. So at the end of the day, like, yeah, I love weight reduction, but if it's easier to ride, it feels lighter to ride, if that makes sense.
It does. And when you and I were back in Valcourt in September, and we toured the factory, we toured the museum, and we had a great conversation with not just Fred and Vincent, but the entire Skidoo engineering team, like 50 people. And it was fun there. You had some comments there. You were like, just going back a couple decades to like the Skidoo Elan, it was just such a small, compact feel. It was narrower, it was lighter, just a smaller footprint. I feel like you got a little of that. You got a narrower option, but you also got a lighter weight option. Like it just makes high elevation backcountry riding just that much easier for me.
Yeah, the Skidoo Elan, I've always just loved that snowmobile because it's got such a narrow stance. The track comes really close up to the front of the skis. It's pretty an impressive old snowmobile. It'll go a lot of places. And we were actually at a meeting probably like 4 or 5 years ago, and I mentioned it. So yeah, I did get a little bit of what I want. So thanks, Fred and Vincent.
Fred, I'm going to come to you with a question here from Quinn Colby off of Instagram. Why didn't you put the coilover on the Expert? It seems like that's what everybody wants. Like, talk a little bit about the torsion spring setup versus the coilover, and why you just kept the coilover on the X this year.
We've been torsion spring since 94, 93. So to go coilover on the X was definitely a decision we took for the weight reduction. And the performance we did observe is quite good. Okay, but before to spread it everywhere, we wanted to touch our customer with it and see what they think. We feel that in the torsion spring suspension that we have on the Expire is having more capacity and more resolution, so we have a broader range of adjustability. But we think that the compromise on the coilover for the lightweight aspect and the X positioning was the best fit. Now, for the future, I prefer to deal with a pulling situation from the customer than pushing it to the market, So I'm glad that we have kind of a pull from the Expire customer that like to have this coilover suspension on their Expire. So let's see where we end up with this moving on.
That makes your job easy there, Vincent, doesn't it? When you can, you have two different vehicles here, and you've got this stuff on one and this stuff on the other, and you can just sit back and listen to the feedback and be like, okay, I know which way to go.
Yeah, they're kind of Lego pieces now, so you just need to choose on which one we want to put them. But as Fred said, I think it was a good thing. Well, we wanted to touch the water with over on the X. It was a lightweight statement, and then from now on, let's see what's the feedback and where we go next.
Ross Halverson was on here earlier when we were getting started, and he, at the intro that we went to, he sent us home with a T-shirt that said Skidoo Test Rider. I feel like that's part of the fun program here about being a Skidoo customer. Is you can go pick one of these, and you are part of the Skidoo Test Rider team, right? Like, yeah, I'll go try out the coilover for a while, and then you're gonna come back and take all this consumer feedback, and we're gonna see where we're gonna go in the future with that coilover. Yeah,
but these things are still proven. I mean, Fred and his team did do a lot of validation before bringing it back to the market.
Yeah,
that's where you're test rider in a sense, but we're making a lot of tests prior to that.
Speak to that a little bit, Fred. How long has this been in development? The coilover on the X. How long have you been working on that?
The S32 and the coilover, they were around the S32 at least for 5 years. Okay, I'm sure, Carl, you recall one of the first proto we tried. It was before COVID. So, and the coilover, I would say a good 3 years. We wanted to be sure that the performance of the Coilover will be at par with our quality ride that we are known for in the trail. And honestly, we are very proud of it. Our Coilover is having 0.4-inch more stroke than the torsion spring, and we have 2 inch of stroke more than the competition, even though we have the lightest suspension now on the market for the 154. So, yeah, you don't do this overnight. The geometry we have needed time to fit our DNA, I will say.
So that segues into another question here from Austin Orgar off of Instagram, and I'll kind of paraphrase this. He says, when people bring a suggestion to the table, and it's like a really good suggestion, maybe Carl brings something to the table, and it's like, okay, a light bulb goes off, and this is something we need to do. How long does that take to integrate into the development process?
It depends, okay, on what we are touching. If we talk engine, if we talk transmission, if we talk EMM, or there is component or system that are more complex than others. But I will say, everything. The minimum, okay, for a quick hit will be like 24 months, okay, and it can goes up to 5 years. And maybe it's something that the ambassador here on the call can comment on. Okay, it's how we use them and our committee, and when we ride with them, what we do with their input. So maybe eventually they can see the link, okay, moving on stuff that they told us a year ago. So sometimes it looks like we don't pay attention to everything, but we do.
Okay, and then y'all have been on the 26s for quite a while. I've got a question here from Brett Alder off of Instagram as well. Is the cooling system more efficient on hard pack trails, icy trails, single track trails, now that it's a shorter system with a shorter tunnel?
Yes, we did many simulation on computer with this, and also obviously outside tests in the real condition. But the flow of the heat exchanger has been revised, so we have a more constant flow each and every. At the end of the day, it's a surface that it's touched by the snow. So you want to have an equilibrium, okay, of where's the best snow contact, okay, versus where's the flow is going, and this is what we have been doing. And in fact, the 26 package will give you better result than a 25. We don't advise it. Okay, we say it's the same because we don't want to overshoot. But the first, Vincent was talking that we had a demo sled going around in Canada and in USA. And this is the thing that the people that tried the proto, they are telling us the cooling is cooler on the 26th than on the 25th, which is good. And this is what we were seeing in our tests. You need the scratcher down, and you'll be okay with the new package. Again, a bit like the S32, we did not just cut the rear exchanger. Okay, we did increase the efficiency. So,
Steve, I'm going to go to you here real quick. We've got a few questions about the 15-inch track on the free ride. What are the pros and cons of the free ride setup with a 15-inch track?
Well, I guess I ride a 146 free ride. Like from now to the end of the year, that's what I'll be on most days. The con is you can't beat physics, so there's not as much track on the ground with the 15. So if you make a mistake and come to a stop in the trees, it's not going to get going like a 16 wide would. But they're more stable, especially at high speeds, and like running into a jump, a whooped out face or something. That's where you notice the whole package feels more like a snowcross sled, and that's what the difference is for sure.
Okay, and then a follow-up question to that I've got from two people here. We'll say Kamechi, why not put a 15-inch wide track with the appropriate width tunnel? Kurthreen, why I would like to see a 15-inch wide track on all mountain sleds. Why do you have 16-inch tracks? Fred, from the engineering standpoint, you've tested both widths, and we've talked about this before too. Why does Skidoo stick with a 16-inch wide on the summits? And I guess part two of that would be on the free ride with the 15-inch wide track. Why do you stick with the 16-inch wide tunnel?
Yeah, okay. To go from 16 to 15 wide tunnel, it's not an easy thing. Okay, so it's a complete new rear chassis. But the reason we stick with the 16-inch on our mountain sled for the X and the Xpire is the floatability, as simple as that. So the print is there's less pound per square inch of track, so we float better. And when we boondock again, the snow is really deep. You can see the skidoo is shining compared to others, and mainly it's because of the 16-inch track. And you know why then we put a 15 on the free ride? It's for the momentum. Okay, if you have high momentum, you will not suffer that much with the 15 because you won't have to go slow. Like myself, okay, sometimes I need to slow down a bit, realign, and punch it again. Okay, where Steve can just hold it in and use the momentum to move on. So it's a bit of that. So we like to boondock with our vehicle, and boondocking and crawling on top of the snow. We always have better result with the 16 than the 15, and this is not hard to test, and it repeat quite good. Even though if you have higher momentum behavior, you'll like the 15-inch because you don't need that crawling type of thing. And this is we offer both, so we have, let's say, the best of both worlds.
And if you've ever ridden with Carl, I should say if you've ever gotten stuck on a ride with Carl around you, you're going to see why that 16-inch track comes into play, because Carl will creep around and he'll sneak up and he'll come right up next to you and he'll pack the snow down and then he'll loop around and he'll back up and then he'll get right next to your stuck sled and he'll put that thing in reverse and he's got this technique to where he never actually has to step off a snowmobile. And he'll reverse and dig out the snow next to you, and then it's just an easy pop out for the stuck sled to jump out there. It's quite the technique, Carl.
Work harder, work harder, not smarter. No, work smarter, not harder.
Vincent, I got a quick question for you on this with the 15-inch topic. We don't need numbers here necessarily, but if you just had a pie chart and you had to split it three ways between Summit X, Summit Expert, and Freeride as far as the deep snow customer concerns, what's kind of the distribution of those three units, I would say?
I would say depend on the year, depending on the product news, because deep snow customers are quite enthusiast riders, so they'll go where the product news is. But let's say on a regular year where all sleds gets equal product news, Expert would get about half of the share, and then quite equal part between Freeride and the X package.
Okay, that's interesting, and I kind of agree with that. And I see more Experts than anything else in our neck of the woods, but I know that's not the same for everywhere. But Expert seems to be the popular one here. Speaking of Expert, I've got one more question specific to the riding characteristics of that. And let's start with Steve Martin on this one. Keen Install on YouTube. He asks, I realize that the market the Expert is intended for, but I wonder about somebody who has never ridden in the mountains or learned to ride wrong foot forward. Could they get on an Expert and ride in the mountains quicker, or would they be better off on an X?
Oh, I think you'll be better off on an X for sure. It'll be so much easier to learn exactly what he's talking about. And it's going to be more fun. And if hasn't rode the mountains, I can assume he's from lower elevation. So when you come up into the mountains for the first time, just the elevation is hard to overcome. Like you see people struggling. So I just think for a successful, fun trip or learning to ride, you won't find an easier experience on the Summit X. It's so easy to ride.
Very intuitive.
I completely agree. If I was 100% with Steve.
Steve's right. It's just such an intuitive sled. Really, it just responds to your touch, easily, right? And that's where the Expert, you got to carry some momentum, to really get the juice out of it, right? Not that you have to totally be an animal on it, but the X, you can just kind of tiptoe, and it's really my opinion, I think it's by far the most forgiving sled we have.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Fred, I'm going to come back to you with just some direct engineering questions on the development side of things. A lot of these things we've talked about before, maybe on previous podcasts. The first one, Porter Lewis 13 on Instagram. He asks, has Skidoo ever tested a belt drive rather than the chain?
No. We are comfortable with our chain actually. Our both competitors, they are having drive belt. Going drive belt will mean larger than the chain case we have now. So, and we think that this will affect our ergonomy. And this is something, short term we are not ready to do. And and at the end of the day, the efficiency of the chain and the weight, when you put everything together, it's I will not say the drive belt does not have advantage, but it does not deliver in performance and in real saving weight what it comes with. So we are comfortable with our choice of leaving the chain. Not saying though that we went Coilover this year, so
yeah, you never know.
We never know.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm not an engineer. I just write stupid captions on Instagram for a living. But there's not quite the same drive ratio capability on a belt drive as there's a chain.
That's true. Okay, but eventually this is not a selection, a reason of our selection. Okay, eventually we can build the gear size that we need. But truly we have much more flexibility with chain than the belt drive.
Okay, quick question on the brake system. The Shiner from Instagram asks, why is the brake caliper mounted on the tunnel? And I believe by that he means mounted on the drive shaft rather than the jack shaft.
Yeah, this is a decision we took in 2008, okay, to go lower with the CG. Today, the brake is direct mount on the jack shaft. And and also if your chain or belt brake, okay, you still have the full brake because that's the last point of torque you can reach. So, but a lower CG, less component inside the hood, the dust, okay, that these pads are doing. This dust goes everywhere on your exhaust. Now. We keep it low, and yep.
Okay, along with the brakes as well, Porter Lewis asks, is the Skidoo brake a softer feel because it's on the drive shaft rather than jack shaft compared to other manufacturers?
Yeah, we need more torque to slow down the drive shaft rather than the jack shaft. But at the end, we can tune this. We think now that with our new short lever and the new brake pad that we are using, that the touch is somewhat good. And but at the end, it's also coming to what you prefer. Sometime on some competition brake, you want to brake, okay, but you over brake it, so then all of a sudden the track is locked. We feel that with the new shorter lever, we can, I should say, more tune how we want the brake to act, okay, and control the speed. And we can keep the brake and throttle together without any issue.
Okay. Vincent, over to you real quick on this next one. The feedback you're getting on the 10.25-inch touchscreen and group ride and updates to the GPS system on that with the built-in antenna, are you hearing feedback from people asking when the brands are all going to be able to see all brands on snow on group ride?
Yeah. I think this year we're making great improvement by having group ride. And now that's the next thing that people are asking. I think that during Sneak Peek and Snowshoot was probably the most asked question, when will ever all the OEMs gather together and build something that works together. So, I mean, now that we're, I would say, on par with the feature, with the competition, it will be easier to open conversations. with everybody. I mean, before that, I mean, there was no reason for them to hear us. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, it needs everybody to have the same feedback and also the same intention. So we'll see if ever we can come to an agreement at some point.
The group ride feature is awesome, and we used it on our intro up in Island Park with you, Fred. And the thing I loved about it, yeah, you can see everybody in your group, and that's not necessarily a new thing, but your map system in there, it shows roads. It's got a really great system for showing terrain, and you can see other snowmobiles even if they've been shut off for a while, because it provides your last known location. If you're out of range or if the vehicle's been off for a while, I still got a chance of figuring out where you're at and locating you pretty quick.
Yeah, correct. And to make a group is very, very easy. Okay, you just have to create your group and put 4 numbers, and all the group is done in a blink, and you don't have to regenerate that group. Okay, the next day, it's as long as you're with the same crew, you can go on the entire winter, and everybody will be tied together. And also, if you see other Ski-Doo customer, even if they are not in your group, you're gonna see them in the screen. So it's also good. I mean, as Vincent say, okay, we're coming from a long way on this one, honestly, but I think now we are getting there, and the ease of use is very it's something. It's quite intuitive to start and very very good. In fact, now that we have it, we can appreciate the gain we can have with this. And yeah.
What does it take to retrofit a 2025 or a 2024 with the 10.25-inch screen with the new software or the new hardware?
Yeah, eventually we can put maybe the part number and your podcast, Ryan, but there is a kit that will be available for less than 200 Canadian that you can have, and you can retrofit the 23, 24, 25 with it. And so it's easy. It will be a plug and play thing, and you can reflash it by yourself in your garage if you have Wi-Fi. It's an over-the-air reflash. So you need to buy the kit that will be sale somewhere in August, September, and you retrofit your sled. So if you have a 23 and your friend just buy a 26, you just go and grab that kit, and you're going to be able to see him on your screen.
Carl, in just a second, we're gonna pop over to you, and you can talk about your fleet, because you were talking earlier about just the miles, well, the kilometers that you're logging on your fleets. You track that year over year, and it's so you're able to see just the overall durability and whatever issues arise throughout your whole fleet, and that kind of is a gauge that you can provide some feedback on. Fred, to you real quick though. I got a question here about the rollers. What have you done to address the issue with the rollers and the secondary? Any other durability issues that have come up in the past?
Yeah, we have a new what we call HD roller. We did introduce it on the 25 on the 850 turbo, and on the 850 with 146 track and more. And 26, it will be on all 850. So this new roller, we did not fail it yet in our test, and we are testing it since a few years already. And this part is also available in service. So yeah, we know that some of our customers did fail a roller once in a while, and we are having a new one in service since last year, and this year on the sled, and the coming 26 will all have it on the 850. So, yeah.
Carl, your fleet, how many sleds do you run up there at CKMP?
We run probably, there would be 20 some guest sleds, and then I would say we probably have another, not quite 10 other guide sleds, something like that. It's in between like 28 and 32 sleds usually is what it takes to make it go around.
So how many miles do you see logged on your fleet in a year?
Well, in the past, we when we had some really big years, we did 80,000 kilometers. That included some race sleds too, and it was probably closer to 40 snowmobiles. But still, that's a number. But I would say we probably average around 65,000 kilometers, which that would be would be probably about 40,000 miles, something like that.
Uh,
42,000 miles or something, I think.
are you seeing a difference between, like Fred, what he was talking about with the rollers this year versus last year? What are you seeing just durability wise on that fleet?
Honestly, it's been really a good year for that. I think honestly, the only time that we see rollers get damaged is usually we've got pretty much everybody trained. Don't use reverse wide open going downhill. It's not good on rollers. It's like throwing your car in reverse and then holding it wide open going down the hill, and then wonder why things break. I mean, that's what we find, anyways. I don't know. Maybe there other people have different situations, but anytime we've had roller issues, is typically from that situation. And we teach people, it's like, man, if you have it in reverse, and you need to give it a shot of forward or shot of forward, momentum, if it's in reverse, like you end up going over the bars before you can give it a good wrap, when you need it.
Yeah, Vincent. So for 2026, one of the I'll call it an incentive because this is the only time of the year that you ever see it is when we go into the spring order phase. But one of your incentives is a 4-year warranty. Is this where does that come from? Is this confidence in product, or is this incentive because of market situation? Talk about that.
Yeah, well, I would say it's mainly coming from the market. I mean, we had that promotion a couple of years ago, and then obviously the big demand during COVID. Everything was sold out quite easily, and now I mean that's a good incentive to buy a sled in spring. And it's not only available on spring exclusive models such as the X Expert and Freeride, but also it's on if ever a customer just want an adrenaline, you can still order it in spring and get the 4-year warranty promotion. So that's a good deal as well. I mean, and there's other promotions available, but I mean that's by far the most popular one so far that we're getting.
Yeah, and if I may, Ryan, to put 4-year warranty on our sled is because we are standing behind it, and we believe that a normal customer will be able to go through a full for winter without issue. So that's why we support it. And our competition is at 3 years now, so we are proud of backing up this 4 years.
And I'm going to hit you with my own question, because this is the question that I get texted this, I get messaged this on Instagram, I get phone calls with this. I was at the hill climb and I got people walking up asking me this. What is happening with the prices on sleds with the tariffs?
If you spring check a sled, okay, the BRP will honor the contract, so there will be no tariff transfer to the customer. No way. Okay, so you can go at your dealer, sign for a sled, and the price you're going to sign for will be the price you're going to pay for.
All right, easy enough there. All right, we're going to wrap up here, and I just want to run across the board here with everybody. A couple rapid fire questions for you. We'll start with you, Jeremy, up there in the corner. 2026, give me your top 2 sleds. If you were going to go order a sled, you have to put it in order for yourself anyway. So you've got to go, tell Ross what you want to be riding next year. So you get to pick and choose here. But if you had your choice of 2 machines, what are they and why? And get specific: track length, track lug height, color, everything.
Well, that's easy. Both experts, a 154 and a 165.
NAs or turbos?
I like both turbos. I live at 9,200 feet and ride 13,000 feet. It's kind of a must where I live. I love NAs though. Like if you're down at low elevation, they're a hoot. They're light, they're fun. But yeah, those are my sled choices. I've kind of talked about it throughout the podcast. I absolutely love the Expert. I think for the type of riding I do, it fits me well, and I can't wait to ride it next year.
All right, down to you, Nerona. Same question.
Summit X, 165, 154, both turbos. And running that super lightweight track, ultra lightweight track on the 154, just to be lighter than Steve Martin.
So
At least I'm taller.
why do you throw a 165 in the fleet?
Well, I've always, it's funny, I grew up around Carl in my sled life. And Carl is just, it's so fun to listen to Carl because he's so humble, but he can teach you things without teaching you things. And when the 174 came out, he was like, "You're gonna love this sled." And I tried that sled, and I was like, "You're right, this is awesome." And since then, I was always on longer sleds because I live in Whistler and we get huge amount of snow and just dump after dump after dump. When people are, don't get me wrong, on a 154, when you're all on 54s and everybody's stuck looking at each other, that's fun too. But it ain't fun when one guy's at the top of the mountain and the rest of them are all down at the bottom stuck. So I've always been on longer machines, and when we stopped doing the 175, or when it was only in the Expert, is when I went to the 65. And then I talked to Cody McNulty about it, and he goes, "Well, yeah, you got to get a 54." And because it's the old guy, young guy thing, it's funny, I got a 54 and I was kind of worried. And the 54 is easier to ride because it just wheelies and goes slow. You can go through the trees as long as you got your speed. But you know what? When you're wheeling on a 165 in 3 feet of powder and doing 70 kilometers an hour, I feel like Steve Martin, how he rides everywhere all day long. So, really, I do want something different. I talked a little bit about I didn't want a 32 and a 34 front end, but having both track lengths, because I'm a smaller guy, a 54, me on a 54 is like most guys on a 65. So when I'm on a 65, it's like a 175. Like I'm climbing stuff in the backcountry, and my buddy on his, I'm like, "Why isn't he up here?" And he's like, "Oh, dude, he's got I got 80 pounds less weight than him." So, it just makes sense for where I am and what I ride. And we haven't had the winters that we've had, for two and a half seasons now, but it's going to kick in. All those people in BC, you better get to your dealer soon because next year is going to be on, baby.
Well, that's interesting to say that. I know I put in our requests with our connection there at Skidoo, and for an NA, I want a 154 Skidoo Summit X because I want that lightweight feel, and then for a turbo, I want the 154 Expert with a 3-inch track and a turbo. Steve Martin, what have you got to say about those two top two sleds?
I'm gonna top two for me. This is really tough because X or Expert, but
also free ride because you're a free ride guy.
Yeah, exactly. So the first one is 154 Summit Expert Turbo. It's a 32-inch front end with the twin link. It's a game changer. And then I really like the new green color. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it really has like 96 Summit vibes for me because that's like the first mountain sled I ever rode that I rode all season was a 96 670 Summit. So that's what it reminds me of. It's Terra Green. Thank you in the chat. But really cool. And then 146 Freeride Turbo. We've spent over an hour talking about the X and the Expert, but the Freeride got a huge amount of love the last 2 years with 40% stiffer valving, T-Motion XT, 15-inch wide track, rack steering. So it's that 146 Freeride Turbo. It feels like a snowcross sled on steroids to me. It jumps well, and we have 70-mile-an-hour track speed everywhere, so you can really ride it on deep days if you carry a lot of momentum.
Well, that free ride, you're right. We didn't touch on that a whole lot, but even for 2026, it got the lighter tunnel material, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So how much lighter is a 2026 free ride? How much weight did it lose?
6 pounds.
That's a pretty big chunk there. So that's a good reason to go for a free ride for 26. Carl, what about you? What are your two picks?
Man, I don't know. I like the Expert in a shorter version. Like I really enjoy it in a 154. And the X, well, I don't know. It's hard to say. I like the Expert in a 54. Like if you're gonna just rip it like a motocross bike, or ride it, that mentality, it's super fun. But the X in the deep snow, I'd take a 165. But if I'm building sleds, I would probably do a 154 X and for my wife or whatever. It's like because that's the lightest starting point, right? So that's a pretty awesome package.
Vincent, I got to ask you because I know you ride. You've ridden with us.
I would take depending. Well, I don't have the occasion to ride it often, but I would say 154 X, NA. As you said, this one is a sherbet.
Yeah, Vincent's one of those guys that you just see William through the trees everywhere you go.
One day, maybe we'll get there.
I wanted to ask you, ambassadors, Jeremy and Steve and Carl and Nerona, how does this work between the ambassador group and the engineering team? As far as you guys are an integral part of providing direct feedback. There's Vincent's job is going out and talking to the customers and getting feedback from customers and from dealerships and from demo rides and everything. But part of your role as ambassadors is to go ride the product in season, go ride the prototype stuff, what's coming. You see some of this stuff coming out a lot sooner than anybody else does. How does that work with the engineering team? How do you provide that feedback back to the team, and what kind of results do you see from that?
That's been going on since I've been part of BRP. It's super cool. They're always asking throughout the season, like, how's your sled? Is it running well? How can we improve? And then we get invited to Valcourt or rides in BC and sometimes here, all over, to provide input of how we feel about how the sleds are performing. I think it's been super cool. I don't think a lot of people realize how much these guys listen to us and our feedback, and just wanted to say thank you guys for that. It's super important. Like, it's pretty cool what we've accomplished.
Yeah, Nerota, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're in it. I feel pretty honored and to get to hang out with not only our team but the whole team at Ski-Doo. People think that serious decisions have to be made at a business, and these are the people making them. But at the end of the day, the love they have for riding and getting out and keeping people riding is it's amazing. And for me, I'm on social a lot, and you get hammered, right? And you get hammered every which way, and it's cool to sort of see, like, when I put out stuff, it's like you see both sides of the fence, right? You see why they have that, why it's this way, why that's an accessory, why it's not on the sled, and you have to kind of answer that. And you may believe that it should come with it, but you understand also in the business aspect why it comes with. And it's such a fun thing to be a part of. I will say one of the best stories was when JF was in charge of SHOT. And I got to try it in 2017 or before that. And it was on a sled. And he goes, okay, I trust you to use my engineering sled. It's going to be on this road. And then I drive down the road, and it's on the road. He's not even there. And I'm like, imagine if someone came around the corner and saw this snowmobile. But I loaded it up on my car, and then I was out riding it in the backcountry. And, you just feel it is a little 007. The two gentlemen up there, Vincent and Fred, they're the real 007s. We're just lucky to kind of get to hang out and bounce stuff on. And, also what people have these ideas, like belt drive is a perfect example. Why don't you have this? It's okay. Why do you need it? Why do you want it? That's the most important question, because people can just say, I want this and this, because they can look at all the other brands and try to make their own, amalgamation of whatever. But when you're an engineer or you're trying to design a better snowmobile for everybody to ride it, and for it to be easier in the backcountry, you have to ask questions that you haven't even really thought of yet. And so when they ask you questions, they're thinking questions that you have to think about. And that's how the sport is changing. It's not just saying, hey, we're just going to add a belt drive, that's going to make a Ski-Doo better, because might make it better in one aspect and worse in a lot of aspects. But it's what do you need and what will make it easier. That's, Carl is really on that, has that pulse as well, right? Because he wants more people to ride and more people to have fun, and that if it's easier, more people will be out there having fun.
What about you, Steve?
Yeah, just like what Dave and Jeremy said, but also the engineering team, they're really good riders as well. So when we give feedback, they can apply it to what they felt, and so they're a lot smarter than we are, for sure.
And I hope that's something that everybody really understands, because we've said that before in the past. This engineering team from Ski-Doo they are mountain riders. Like when they bring us out and they have new product, or we go out on the mountain with them, they're right there with us, and they're right there pulling on skis with us and pulling on my ski. They're pulling my ski more than I pull on their ski. I guarantee it. It's just fun to have them out there. And we don't have Matt on. We had Matt on last time, but we don't have him on this time. And Matt's a phenomenal rider, and he's like you said, Fred. You had been in charge of the deep snow segment. Now it's Matt. You've kind of handed it off to Matt. Last time I was out on the snow with Matt, I was kind of keeping an eye on him, and he was taking every opportunity we had. Any downtime, he was on the snow out there by himself, just kind of experimenting, trying to do some of the maneuvers that he sees these other guys do, trying to get, lift the snowmobile up and keep the throttle on and spin it around and set it back down and go out the other direction. Like, he's out there trying to figure this out because he wants to feel the product and feel what it's doing so that he can understand exactly what everybody's talking about and make it better. And Skidoo has been one thing that really stands out with Skidoo is just how much they listen to feedback and listen to customers. And it really stands out how much they like to pull in that information that they gather from media, from dealerships. A lot of the dealerships that we work with, you go in there and you start talking about it, and the dealer would be like, "Oh yeah, Fred was in here a little while ago checking out the dealership and talking to us about the product." And to have that engineering lead coming into the dealerships all across the West and getting direct feedback is pretty impressive. Fred, what else do you want to add to this? Do we want to talk about any other product?
We did cover quite a lot of things, and just to go back a bit on what the guy just said about their work with us. I mean, it's hand in hand, okay, because we need these input, okay, otherwise we will lose time. And having all this input from customer, from ambassador, also from media when we ride with you guys, okay, at the end it's a ton of data that we need to swallow. We try to make the best out of it. And without this, I don't think we will be where we are at the number one position. So it's quite amazing if we take the time to listen. It's helping us at the end of the day. So yeah, this year we had this huge change in the mountain, but we also had a huge change in the utility segment with the new Expedition segment that was all revamped, new suspension, new rear suspension, new look, new everything. And this is also a very big market for us, the crossover and the utility. The 20-inch track market is very big, mainly in Northeast. This is very, very good. Maybe Vincent can tell more than me about the split in all the segment, but I will say that this segment is at par with the mountain in terms of vehicle volume, and we are very proud to dominate that quite solid. And we were proud this year to introduce this new 26 utility lineup. And we've made some change also on the Renegade 4-stroke with the new front suspension that was developed for the 2-stroke. Now we import it on the 4-stroke to give also a very good ride. We did not just cut and paste it from one sled to the other. We made some adjustments that are in line with the extra weight of the 4-stroke. So the vehicle is going very good, and again, everything was dialed in to fit the customer and also the vehicle. I don't know, Vincent, maybe you can help me here. Did I forget something that has to be mentioned? You're still mute.
Yeah, I was about to say there's also the entry-level models and Neo models, the mid-size sleds that are moving to the new platform. So I know Jeremy, his daughter, has moved to the Gen 5, but I don't know, Steve or Dave, if your kids will be big enough soon to get on the Neos in the mountains. So having the new Gen 5 platform in the Neos is a great achievement. Also for those that are spring checking or making sure that your sled that you're spring checking, even if it's Neo, it will be at the same price as last year on the Gen 4. So that's another good reason to go buy a sled right now. I mean, that's pretty much it. The new groove feature on the gauge was something we discussed. That's a great achievement, great novelty as well on our lineup.
we get a chance to ride, we focus on mountains, obviously, and this whole group, we ride mountain sleds the majority of the time, pretty much the only time. But whenever we do these intros, we get a chance to get on, like you're talking about, Fred, the expedition. And that Expedition Extreme, I could be happy riding that thing. Like, that was a lot of fun. I don't think I'd go do a lot of backcountry stuff, but I would hop on an Expedition Extreme and go explore some stuff that I've never done before. And we also get a chance to get on, the backcountry and the Renegade line, and that 900 Ace turbo. If you're out there as a snowmobiler and you've never squeezed a throttle on a 900 Ace turbo, go try it. Like, I highly recommend that feel. Like, that's an adrenaline rush. All right, we got anything else to add here? If not, we'll kind of wrap it up here. We've gone pretty long here, but we got into great detail, and it's been a lot of great info from you guys. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for thank you for having us, Ryan.
No worries.
We always listen at all your podcasts, no matter the topic, and it's always interesting, and it's an honor to be part of your show.
Dal, thanks for coming on. Again, here we've got guests here today: Fred Desjardins, Skidoo Product Manager; Vincent Duchesne, Skidoo Product Manager; and then Skidoo Ambassadors: Steve Martin, Jeremy Mercier, Carl Kuster, Dave Nerona. We were going to have Tony Jenkins on, but he's out riding today, so we'll catch him another time there.
We'll see him in Jackson.
Yeah, we'll see him in Jackson. Hey, Carl, I was going to say your guy did really well last weekend at the hill climb that came down and raced.
Yeah, Blake. Yeah, he's a great kid.
Yeah,
I didn't know really what to expect, but I think he did all right.
He's got some speed. Is he going to run at Jackson again?
Yep, he is. Hopefully he didn't beat my sled to death. I got to ride that thing still.
We talked about that on the broadcast. I said, yeah, Blake's running a 111 there on the side of that sled, but if you look right above that, you see that 47C. He better take that sled home in one piece.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty smooth, actually. He doesn't break much stuff, and he's pretty trainable, so he likes working on them, too, so that's awesome.
Now, even better. Yeah, he can fix his own stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay. With that, we'll sign off. I want to thank everybody for coming on here and thank everybody for listening to the show. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us just create more and more of this content. You can also find more of our shows on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And go to snowwest.com. Check out the magazine. Check out the hats and T-shirts and everything that we have to offer there. And thanks again for listening. And thank you all for coming on.